to another episode of Fix My Style. So, today I'm going to tackle a little different, or have a different guest myself. I'm going to tackle one of my real life style issues that I've come across since we're doing some construction in our house. If you subscribe to my newsletter, you know more about it. But we're doing some construction, so going live and doing podcast interviews and videos, I had to relocate because my office is out of commission. And really, when you can't completely redo a space that or you're traveling and you're in a new space for your video conferencing, what do? All of a sudden, it's not a space that you've maybe curated and set up like my office. I've set it up. I know exactly what's in the background, is always ready to go. This place was not. So, full disclosure, I'm in my kids' kind of hangout area, TV room. And yes, it's not set up for my regular style discussion background. So, what do you do when you gotta shift fast and come up with a new video conferencing space, Zoom, whatever it is? So, when I did this for myself last week and this week, I thought, you know what? These are some pretty simple 5 tips that I can share with everyone. And I'm sure some of you will maybe use it right away or get something out of it. So let's jump straight in, because construction is going to continue downstairs. And I promised I would not be on for that long. They're staying quiet. All right. So I'm going to start by showing kind of what the space looked like before I started playing around with it. So this is what we had to start with. It was pretty white background. Yeah, kind of a weird angle, the way the room is set up and where I could sit. So this was the starting point, and it wasn't ideal. So my tip number 1 is to make sure you center yourself in the camera. So in front of, and also in the screen. So I'm sure you've heard that the camera should be head on, you should have lighting behind it, all that. I'm not going to go into those details, but make sure that you yourself is centered within the screen. So not too much to one side or too low. You want to be pretty center of attention. Now, that was tip number 1. Number 2, a little depth in the background is always a good idea. So, not sitting flat up against the wall, but having some depth behind you creates a little more interest. So, here I did just turn the camera. It used to be more that way. Just turn the camera so you see more of the corner of the room. And also put some lighting in the back, which creates, illuminates the corner, which creates more drama, or more, not necessarily drama, but more interest, kind of something to look at. So, yes, creating a little scenography back there with depth and a corner is a great idea. Number 3, balance. So not just that you are in the center of the screen, but also that you have balance on the screen behind you here. So before, I had way more white space, if you remember the picture, and it was a lot going on this side, nothing going on that side. That is not a balanced space. So instead, by turning the camera and just putting something here that kind of fills the white space. So now there is balance on both sides. They don't have to be equal. It doesn't have to be totally symmetrical, but as long as there's a visual balance from one side to the other, it will make it more easier to look at. Otherwise, your brain goes a little tilted. One side gets more attention than the other. So creating a balance. And also we want to try to avoid too much white space in a video conferencing or on screen, unless it's, you're talking about white spaces or you want a completely clean background. But otherwise, having one area that's very white and then having something on somewhere else, that's a big void right there, a visual void that needs to be balanced out. Number 4, adding some natural elements. So I put a plant back there. It doesn't usually live back there, but adding some natural elements of, it could be wood or it could be plants, something like that, just softens the look a little bit. I put this plant here too, so it both filled out the space and also added some natural elements. It softens the overall look. And by adding natural elements too, it's a calming effect. These don't have to be real, especially when they're far away. So it could be fake plants that you move around, but it does bring in a sense of calmness and serenity to the overall space. So unless you're talking about something very, very harsh, then adding a natural element is a great idea. And number 5, my last tip for today, you won't see it because it's a sound tip. Now, normally when I do TV or podcast interviews and I'm in my office, it has tile floor, which is not great from a sound perspective. So one tip you can do, if you normally have a pretty soundproof area with a carpet, which we do have here, carpet, so it's perfect, just putting down blankets on the floor, some blankets or pillows on the floor around you where you're sitting, that will soften the bounciness of the sound. So it will muffle and work as a kind of improvised sound booth. So if you're sitting around tile floor or wood floor or vinyl, anything like that, putting some blankets and pillows down around you. Also, if you're sitting on a counter that's a stone or something like that, that also bounces sound, putting just a blanket, which I do have here. I do have a blanket on this table. And that also helps absorb sound. So that works great. So to recapture my 5 tips for making any space into more interesting visually in a video conferencing situation or a recording or live streaming situation. Number 1, make sure you're centering yourself on the screen and straight in front of the camera, but also on the screen, top, bottom, side to side. Want to make sure you're center. Number 2, create a little interest with depth in the background. And to make it more dramatic, add some lighting into the depth or in the depth. So we have center, we have depth. Number 3, visual balance in your background. Make sure there's not too much going on one side of you, not the other. Number 4, always a good idea to add some natural elements, some plants here and there. And number 5, if you don't have carpet or rug, put down some blankets or pillows around where you sit. That's what I had this week. So I hope that gave you some good ideas and tips for make rocking any area in your house and making it into a great visual conferencing place. Don't forget that you can submit questions, your own style questions. And if you don't want to be on camera, we can just talk about them. But if you want to hang out with me here live, I would love that. You can DM me below or just, I will also send a link to where you can submit your style questions or problems or conundrums or whatever they are. Alrighty, until next week. As always, remember that chic happens. Bye bye.